At Ease, we're all about calculating the best high for you. Ran out of shows to watch for the second time this week? Order an Indica pre-roll. Social distance park hang? Pair that awkward picnic with a vaporizer. See, we're like your weed guy, but 420% nerdier. So just worry about when you're going to take that edible and let us do the rest. Ease, highly calculated cannabis delivery. Get 30% off your first order with promo code NERD at ease.com. That's EAZE.com.
San Manuel Casino has your chance to drive away in a brand new 2021 Mercedes-Benz GLS SUV every Thursday in March. Earn entries by using your Club Serrano card at your favorite slots and table games and listen for your name to be called at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and 7 p.m. each week. Stay late for another shot at winning big during our 8 p.m. free play bonus drawing. New wheels on us, only at SoCal's #1 casino, San Manuel. Must be 21 to enter casino. Please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobby Capucci, and this is a morning update. What is going on, everybody? So if you missed the live stream on Sunday, you missed a good one. We had a fantastic conversation going on in the thread. We were joined by some special guests, and it was an absolute fantastic time for everyone involved. So I hope that this Sunday, if you haven't joined us yet, that you are able to pop in and say what's up and have a bit of a chat with us for a while. Now, starting probably the first week of February, I'm going to do one of those live streams earlier in the day on Sundays. That way people in places like England and Europe, they can be involved and not have to stay up to all kinds of weird hours. So one Sunday per month we'll do an earlier show so that we get some more participation from the fans over in Europe and over in England. And especially with the lockdowns going on over there, I want to throw you guys a little bit of a bone, right? A little bit of, a little bit of content, a little something to do on a Sunday if you're bored and you're awake and, you're looking to kill some time and try and forget about the pandemic for a little bit. So that's certainly in my plans. I have not forgotten my fantastic friends across the pond, and I'm certainly keeping you in mind. So we will definitely be rocking out those earlier shows. And you know what? Maybe even the last show of this month, we'll do the early show. That way we can get cracking on that. So I'll figure it out within the next week and I'll let you folks know. But definitely expect a live stream, an earlier live stream for the folks over in Europe and over in England. All right. So today we're going to get right back at it, folks. We're going to dive right back into the whole money laundering portion of Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal enterprise. And we're going to talk about 7 things that we have to look out for, 7 things to keep an eye on after the anti-money laundering laws took effect on January 1st. Now, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, they have a new article out detailing the 7 things that we should be on the lookout for. And considering we have been following the FinCEN files pretty much since they broke, and honestly, it's one of the biggest tie-ins with Jeffrey Epstein that we've come across. One of the best situations where the curtains have been pulled back a little bit, and it shows us a little bit of the process on how this occurred, on how the money laundering happens, how they use the shell companies. And with the FinCEN files, it gives us a good blueprint to go back and to look at and to compare what was going on with Epstein with what we know was going on here in the FinCEN files. And we already know that we could trace Epstein all the way back to the Paradise Papers, to the Panama Papers, to Mossack and Fonseca. So Epstein and his criminal enterprise, they really tie in with all of this. And if we don't have the basis, right, the blueprint for this money laundering and for these financial crimes, we would never understand the full scope of what Epstein was up to. Because without this money laundering and without this dark money, then none of the other behavior would be a possibility, certainly not on the grand scale that it was taking place. So, I know it's cliche, but we're going to follow the money. Today's article is from the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Headline, 7 Things to Watch After Historic Anti-Money Laundering Overhaul in the United States. The landmark legislation contains several loopholes, exemptions, and shortcomings that may become key vulnerabilities in the fight against corruption and financial secrecy, advocates say. What did I tell you guys when we were talking about all of this? And the AML was coming into effect, and we really didn't know the whole law, right? My thing always has been, let's hope it has some teeth. And already we're seeing loopholes. Already we're seeing backdoors for these people to exploit. And it's disheartening to me. And you wonder why I say, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Nothing's going to change, unfortunately, folks, until we send people to DC who really care. And to be honest with you, that certainly doesn't seem like what's going to occur here with 46. Just take a look at all of the cabinet members. Just take a look at where they all come from. How many of them are from the financial sector? How many of them went to Harvard? How many of them were part of the CFR? How many of them were part of the Carnegie Institute? So why would I think for a second that they'd be going after all of their besties? It just doesn't work like that. And if the actual legislation has loopholes and backdoors, then it's just going to be more of the same, except they'll be able to point to the new AML laws and say, hey, look, we did something, we tried to fix something, we're doing our best. But here's an idea. Leave out all of the loopholes. No backdoors. How about just for once, the law is what it says? So this article was authored by Spencer Woodman. Washington lawmakers rang in the new year by largely banning anonymous shell companies in the United States, one of the world's most attractive places for criminals and wrongdoers around the world to hide dirty money. Sounds good, right? Off to a good start. Definitely a good thing to close those loopholes. Definitely a good thing for there to be some transparency when it comes to anonymous shell companies. All right, on a good track so far here, right? Perfect. Let's continue. The new law will, for the first time, require millions of companies incorporated in the U.S. to report their true owners to the federal government for inspection by law enforcement and compliance officers at banks and other financial institutions. Known as the Corporate Transparency Act, the law was attached to a massive national defense funding bill that Congress passed with a veto override. So remember, this was stuffed into that NDAA, and also stuffed into that NDAA, which I'm not going to get too deep into here, is some anti-streaming laws that I find to be very draconian. So maybe we'll get to that at some other time. I'm really thinking about a new podcast where we talk about a variety of issues, different issues, news from around the world, stuff like this, little things that might slip by, passed on like a Friday night, little things that I feel will affect us moving forward as citizens, stuff like that. But more of a show focused on different topics. I think that there is a market for that, and I think from the emails I have received from a lot of you out there, and from the conversations that I've had from a lot of you out there, it would be something that people would be interested in. So it's certainly something I'm thinking about, and there's just a lot to talk about, right? That I don't want to drag into this Epstein case and muddy the waters here. But there's so much corruption and so much we can get to. And honestly, a lot of it overlaps with our Jeffrey Epstein conversation anyway. Because Epstein is the face at this point of all of those scuzzbag elites that we always talk about. So I'm going to definitely think about something like that and, perhaps throw something together, because there is just so much corruption, folks. As the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists has reported across multiple investigations, including most recently the FinCEN files, anonymous companies are a major vulnerability in the global fight against tax avoidance and money laundering. Drug cartels, oligarchs, despots, and the global elite use them to conceal fortunes from tax authorities and law enforcement. So, even right here in the article from the consortium, they're talking about how the global elites use this stuff to launder money, to hide their money. So if you think it's just something I'm, spitting up and throwing against the wall here, or, looking to direct some rage somewhere, that's not the case. I believe that the financial sector is really a huge problem with humanity being stuck in the rut that we're in. It's a global problem. We are slaves to debt, folks, all around the world, living way above our means, while these banks continue to absolutely destroy us. It is not acceptable, it's not sustainable, and it's something that we're going to have to address and deal with at some point. As the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists has reported across multiple... we're past there. Establishing a U.S. government registry of company owners was a key reform that experts said was needed in response to ICIJ investigations. So this goes to show you that good investigative reporting and good investigative journalism gets things moving. We've seen it with Julie Brown in our case as well, right? The Miami Herald picks up the ball, they start looking into what occurred, and it forces law enforcement to do the same because the public outcry is so severe and so fierce. So that's what happened here. The FinCEN files broke, and then all of these government officials, they latched onto that, and they used that as the basis to create this new anti-money laundering law. But the transparency is not complete. The law, supported by both the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and left-leaning Public Citizen, an unusual Washington alliance, is the result of years of negotiations. It contains loopholes pushed for by special interest groups that may blunt some of its power, even according to those who advocated for it and are now celebrating its passage. People like me. This is what I've talked about. The lobbyists, the special interest groups. I'm so tired of these senators and Congress people hanging out near K Street. Do we really need these people to stay in D.C. anymore? Honestly, they can't do the people's work from home. Shouldn't they be home amongst their constituents? I know that if I ran for office, there'd be two things that I'd run on, two major things that I'd run on. One, I would not accept any money from out of state to pursue my seat in Congress or the Senate. 100% without a doubt. And two, I would promise my constituents that I would not be in D.C. I'd go there for major votes or things I'd have to be there in person for, but I would stay at home. You could take care of everything you need to take care of mobily now, right? That's what we're doing, isn't it? Aren't we Zoom meeting from home? If it's good enough for Aunt Betha, it's good enough for these Congress people and senators. The closer they are to K Street, the closer they are to being corrupted. And that's all of them. Just look at these people. Look at, what's his name, Boehner. He was so staunch against marijuana, so staunch against drugs. Oh, we're sending people to prison, writing all kinds of draconian laws. The dude leaves public office and joins the board of a cannabis company? How don't you choke on that hypocrisy? But that's the kind of people we're dealing with here. And like I said earlier, just like computer programmers, they're going to add a backdoor so that they have a way to navigate, so that their friends have a way to navigate, and find a way to get out of trouble and to get around regulations. And until we send people to Washington, D.C. who aren't there to enrich themselves, who aren't there to use politics as a career, there should be no political class. It shouldn't be a career. It should be a public service that you do for your community for 4 or 8 years and then bring your ass back home and get on with your life. But no. Once you get a little taste for the power, you're corrupted by it. Here are 7 major areas where experts say the bill falls short that could pave the way for future political action. Number 1. Some Wall Street investment vehicles don't have to report. Hedge funds and private equity firms create pooled investment vehicles typically open only to wealthy investors. The law does not apply to some of these entities, experts say, even though law enforcement has warned that they are ripe for abuse. Of course they don't. This is the same thing as the turn and burn IPOs that Jeffrey Epstein was getting, right? They get special treatment. They get special rules, special laws, and if you're part of a hedge fund or a private equity firm, you know, the same people that funded Joe Biden to become president, the same people that were in Donald Trump's ear, the same people that funded Obama and Bush, and do I have to continue? These are the same people that are exempt from these sorts of laws. These are the same people that have loopholes to navigate so they don't have to be on the same playing field as us. So think about that next time you're cheering on one of these senators or one of these Congress people as they're standing on their ivory tower. Threat actors, according to a 2020 Federal Bureau of Investigation bulletin, likely use the private placement of funds, including investments offered by hedge funds and private equity firms, to launder money. Well, no shit, water is wet and the desert is hot. Everybody knows that these hedge fund managers are a bunch of scuzzballs. Everybody knows that these hedge fund managers are involved in all sorts of money laundering and nonsense. But let's make sure we have a loophole in the new AML laws so that they can navigate it and continue their centuries-long reign of theft and greed. Number 2, big businesses are exempt too. Oh, well, why not? Let's just pile it on. We couldn't have the corporatocracy have to follow the rules, right? Our new corporate overlords couldn't follow the rules, right? Who would have thought that Huxley would have been so on point? We're all focused on 1984 over here, and meanwhile, it's a brave new world instead. The new law exempts any firm that has more than $5 million in annual revenue, more than 20 employees, and a physical office in the U.S. At least in my world, that exemption covers nearly everyone, said Stephen Quinlivan, a corporate lawyer specializing in mergers and acquisitions at Stinson LLP. One rationale for the carve-out, the advocates say, is that these larger companies have actual employees in offices and are thus much easier to understand. Oh yeah, so much easier to understand. Do they really think that excuse and that reasoning is going to be a selling point for anyone who's following this, or for anyone who understands that these big businesses are legitimately at the heart of the issue? It's such absolute shit that they actually believe that this is going to make us feel comfortable. I hate to say it, folks, but with all of these loopholes, this is just more window dressing. And it goes back to what I said when we were reporting on this at first. Sherrod Brown, he has a lot to say, right? A lot of big words, a lot of big promises. Well, now you have the Senate. Now you have Congress. Now you have the White House. You know what you do not have anymore, Mr. Brown? You have no more excuses. Get it done. It can be difficult to determine who technically owns a trust's wealth before distributions are made, experts say. Unlike companies, trusts often do not register with any government. The new law explicitly exempts certain types of charitable and semi-charitable trusts. Really? This is where all the money's going to be moved then. This is where they're going to be moving their money around into the charities so that they don't have to follow these laws and these rules. We saw them do it with Epstein. We saw Leon Black. We saw Glenn Dubin. How many more times do we need to see this BS? Advocates are also concerned about the wider category of personal and family trusts slipping through the cracks because these entities might not fall into the new law's definition of a company. For this reason, experts believe the new law could de facto exclude a wide swath of personal and family trusts. Where do all of these rich people keep their money? Personal and family trusts, huh? But they're going to be exempt. Shocking. You know what all of these senators and Congress people, you know what they all have too? I'm sure they all have their own trusts. Do you really think they're going to write laws that are going to screw them in the long run? If that was the case and they truly had any integrity, if they had any sort of morality, they'd put up a law that would have to do with term limits for the Congress and Senate. 8 years in both. You could do 8 as a congressman, 8 as a senator, and that's it. And that's even pushing it, in my opinion. But they'll never do that. They'll never put any laws on the books that are going to affect them. This is the biggest concern for me, said Gary Coleman, the director of Transparency International's United States office, adding that he believes that trusts are already one of the U.S.'s largest money laundering vulnerabilities. Coleman adds that it is possible that, during the implementation of the law, federal agencies could interpret its language to include some trusts, and the law mandates a study into problems that the lack of trust ownership information poses. So, it's going to be manipulated. It's going to be used as a loophole, and it's obvious that the so-called elites are going to continue to move the way they've always moved. They'll just have to make a few tweaks and a few adjustments. But don't worry, their scumbag lawyers will be there to show them the way. The new ownership registry will remain secret. Aw, how cute. Secret. There's no transparency. Sherrod Brown, another person who's up there serving us up some wolf tickets. I said it when we were talking about Sherrod Brown and this law that I didn't trust him, that I thought he was a scoundrel. And I'm probably going to be proven correct once again here. It's all about show for them, right? It's all about the aura of them doing things to make our lives better. It's all about putting on the big play, the grand play. Yeah, we care about our constituents. We care about this money laundering. When in reality, none of these loopholes would have been put in here if they really cared. Only a subset of government and financial institution officers will be able to access ownership information contained in the new, secure, non-public database that the law establishes. Researchers, journalists, and others trying to track dark money will be shut out. So the saga continues. As journalists, content creators, and people interested in the truth, we'll have to rely on whistleblowers. And hopefully with the new safe harbor laws that are being put into place, these whistleblowers will be more inclined to come forward. I know that if I had some information and I'm getting 30% of 190 million, I'd be doing the Conor McGregor, Vince McMahon walk all the way down to the FBI or the Treasury office to rat on whoever the hell was involved in these financial discrepancies. 30% of 190 million? 30% of 390 million? A lot of money, folks. A fully public ownership registry wouldn't be unique. In 2016, the United Kingdom mandated that many companies registered in the country must list their owners in a registry that is freely accessible to the public online. Look, I'm down with that, right? If I owned a business and it was, all legit and on the up and up, I wouldn't mind if my business was in some public registry. I'm paying taxes on that business. I'd be prideful of that. I'd be proud of the business I built. Why am I trying to hide in secrecy? Here's an idea. Pay your taxes, stop being an asshole, and just try and be a human for once. Although the UK registry has been beset by faulty or absent information, transparency advocates say that the public inspection of the information has been crucial in flagging problems that should be fixed within the system. Advocates say their support of a public ownership registry will not stop with the passage of the new law. That's going to be a fight we're going to continue to have down the road over time. Clark Gascon, a senior policy advisor at the Financial Accountability and Corporate Transparency Coalition, told ICIJ. And that's good, right? I like that these groups, the Transparency Coalition and other groups, are still fighting to make sure that real laws with teeth go onto the books, and not just more BS for these idiots to manipulate. And I think what the UK has going on there is a good idea, full transparency. If you're a business owner, you shouldn't care if somebody knows that you own a business or what your business is. It's absolutely ludicrous. Registry access for state and local law enforcement is limited. So, state and local law enforcement don't have access, or a limited access. Once again, we're relying on the feds. That should make all of you feel comfortable, right? Because we know that the Federal Bureau of Investigations is totally on their game, totally on point. I am not comforted by that fact, okay? I trust the state law enforcement officials much more than I trust the federal ones at this point. The new law stipulates that although many federal agents will have relatively easy access to the ownership database, state and local law enforcement will have to obtain permission from a court employee each time they want to access it. This seems excessive and is going to discourage law enforcement, said Alma Angadi, Global Legislative and Regulatory Risk Director at the consulting firm Guidehouse. Yeah, why would more loopholes, more steps for the law enforcement to have to jump through to do their job? Here's an idea, streamline it, make it nice and easy. But they won't. Again, this certainly just looks like window dressing once again, folks. Is it good that there's something on the books? Of course. Are some people going to get nailed with it? Of course. Is it going to be the right people? I have my doubts. Number 6. Art dealers don't have to report suspicions of financial crime for now. Oh, so that's nice. The art world continues to just move like the scuzzbags they are. Who has $1 billion art collection? What are you, the Pope? Give me a break, Leon Black. So you got $1 billion art collection, huh? I'm sure that's all on the up and up. I'm sure that art collection hasn't been used to steer money or maneuver money in a dark manner. I'm sure that's never happened. Never once. Leon Black's above such things. Along with the disclosure requirements, the overall defense spending law also expands the range of businesses that must report suspicions of having done business with criminals. Left off that list? Art dealers. What do you know? How many of these art dealers are big-time political donors? How many of these art collectors are people within the political world? How many of them are friendly with the new administration? I'll save you the legwork, folks. A lot of them. The art trade is a major hotspot for international money laundering, as ICIJ recently reported in the FinCEN files. Elise Bean, a former U.S. Senate aide and investigator, called the art exemption strange and noted that the legislation requires a study into the art market that she hopes will lead to art dealers finally being added to the law. While art dealers have been offered a free pass for now, the law does demand, for the first time, that antiquities dealers report suspicious activity to federal authorities. So I wonder who lobbied for this loophole. That would be an interesting look, to find out who lobbied for the art world, who paid for those lobbyists, and what the purpose behind that lobby really was. Because we all know the art world is corrupt as hell. And if anyone should be getting slapped with penalties here, it's them. Number 7. This one's really going to launch you guys into orbit like it did me. This is galling, folks. The penalty for leaking ownership information is harsher than for not reporting it to the government in the first place. What? If anything shines a light on the backwards-ass nature of the United States government at this point, at the absolute dumpster fire that it is, something like this does it perfectly. Just like the guards who fell asleep when Epstein allegedly killed himself. They're the only ones getting slapped with felonies, huh? And so right here, if you leak this shit, oh, you're going to prison forever. But if you're the person who didn't report it, no worries, we're going to give you a fine. Kind of like Mr. Assange, huh? By the way, he needs to be pardoned today, okay? Pardon Assange. Pardon Snowden. Pardon, what's her name? Chelsea Manning. All of them. Enough is enough already. People who misreport company ownership information face a maximum penalty of 2 years in prison. Anyone who leaks ownership data to the press or anyone else could face up to 5 years in jail and a decade if the disclosure happens while committing another federal crime. Look at that shit. Longer than Jeffrey Epstein, huh? 2 years. 2 years for people who don't report. 5 if you leak. But Jeffrey Epstein, 13 months, out every day. You tell me the system isn't screwed up, folks. Give me a break already. This is absolutely ridiculous. I know somebody who did 5 years for so-called illegal sports gambling. These penalties are out of whack, Ross Delston, a lawyer and consultant in Washington, D.C., specializing in anti-money laundering systems, told ICIJ. Since when is the ownership of a company an inherently private matter? The law separately creates new rewards and protections for whistleblowers who come forward to the government about a broad range of financial misconduct. So what they're saying is, come to the government. You can be a whistleblower to the government. We have these incentives, but don't you dare go to the press. So that is very interesting. And I'm very interested to see how this all plays out. What I'm really interested to see, though, is now that it's time to put up or shut up, I'm really interested to see what Sherrod Brown, 46, and the new leadership apparatus really does now that the ball is in their court. Because for the last 4 years, we've heard a lot of platitudes, a lot of big talk from a lot of people claiming everyone else is biased. Well, now the talking is over. Now it's time for the rubber to meet the road. And let's see if 46, the new Congress, and the Senate actually have the huevos to make all of this stuff a reality and to go after the scummiest amongst us. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. To everybody who has donated to the podcast via PayPal or GoFundMe, thank you folks so much. And to everybody who is sharing the show with their friends and their relatives, their neighbors, that is such an important aspect of what's going on, especially considering that iTunes is trying to railroad us. So please continue to do all of that, folks. Continue to support the show. I thank you folks so much for all of that. And I will be back later on.
Is eating fish healthy? Certainly not for the fish. Definitely not for the oceans. That's the reason the Sarno brothers, founding chefs at Good Catch Foods, began perfecting 100% plant-based seafood. Go to goodcatchfoods.com to learn more or shop online.
Amor, ¿estás preparando caldo con vegetales?
Sí, fui a Aldi. Les llegan vegetales frescos cada día.
¡Qué bueno!
Doctora mamá, la necesitan urgente en el cuarto de su hijo Daniel.
El deber me llama.
Porque eres más que una mamá, mereces más de tu supermercado. Por eso en Aldi tenemos la gran calidad que mereces a los precios bajos que buscas. Como nuestras frutas y vegetales que nos llegan muy frescos cada día. Para productos de calidad a precios bajos todos los días, ven primero a Aldi.